Hello, I hope you guys had a great fall break. If you can hear me okay, my computer started making this really odd sound, almost like it's having a hard time with the DVD drive, which is funny because it doesn't have a DVD drive. Or it also makes a sound sometimes with a remote control car, which is a little unsettling. So I'm going, after we are doing our thing today, I'm going to have to take it in to Best Buy and see, what kind of first aid they can give the poor thing. I am also in my living room at home. The dogs sometimes will pat around and you'll hear their fingernails on the hardwood floor that I put in all by myself. Thank you. And if that's the case, I'm apologizing ahead of time. I'm kind of excited about this week's stop in our world tour. Oh, I should mention also that all the grades were up to date last week, and I was able to put everybody's midterm grade in. If you guys have any questions, just let me know. And that, of course, changes as more people are turning stuff in, and I am grading everything and getting everything up to date. There were a couple of things I wanted to mention. One is, and it slipped through a couple of people because I guess I was tired or something. The research assignment that has the list of 10 sources all need to be, and it's right at the top of the assignment page, all need to be from the one artist that you picked in Module 3 to do your research on. So if you got a note about that, just resubmit it. And if I gave you full marks, even though your sources were on different artists, I apologize. You will need to go ahead and redo those to help you in your research, because your annotated bibliography is going to be on the one artist that you picked back in Module 3. The second thing I wanted to point out is that when you turn in your annotated bibliography, one thing that you need to remember to do is that all the online sources, after you do the citation in MLA style, and what I've seen, everybody has done a really beautiful job. Everything's alphabetically arranged. It's nicely done with the two paragraphs, one paragraph summarizing your source, what your source material is, and the second paragraph, your thoughts about it. Everybody's been doing that just beautifully. In MLA style, when you do an online citation, after you do the full citation, you have an end period. The end period is usually after something like the publication date or something like that. It's at the end of the citation. After that period, you need to put in 2 words and a date. The 2 words are accessed on, and then the date. And the date you could do the same, whatever format you want, as long as all of your citations are the same format. So you can do month, day, and year with slashes in between, or you could spell it out. It doesn't matter, but the format needs to be the same for the date on all your citation sources. But the reason for that is because the citations that you put in a paper, the MLA format, allows people after you and you later on to rediscover your sources and revisit them. With the internet, things are changing all the time, but there are a number of machines, like there's the Wayback Machine that you've no doubt seen, and archive.net. Both of those machines, or search engines, are designed to show a researcher what the internet looked like on a specific date. So if you are using a source that is no longer accessible, when you put the access on date in there, another researcher can follow up with the work that you've been doing by using a Wayback Machine or an archive machine and plugging in that date accessed on so they can find the same source that you used. That's why it's necessary. Okay, the reason, switching gears now, going back to our regular scheduled program, the reason I'm excited about this week's World Stop on a World Tour is because I went to Iran. The artwork that I do is designed specifically to be cross-cultural. And about 7 years ago now, my artwork came to the attention of a couple of universities in Iran, and they asked me to come for a fellowship to study Islamic art and philosophy. And that was an incredibly intensive couple of weeks where we did a semester's worth of work in just a very short amount of time. But it was astounding how much I learned. And I did not realize that how little information Westerners have about Islamic art and Iranian or Persian art in specifically. And that's not detrimental. That's not meant to be detrimental or negative in any way. It's just that generally everybody's interests lie elsewhere, and that's totally fine. So today we're going to be talking about Iran and some Islamic art, and the module itself. There's some things in art history, statements that people make when they don't really understand the culture that they're examining, and they'll say things that are not meant to be negative or anything like that, but they just don't understand the culture completely. And that's true of everything. But I went through and I one of the things that I try to do is help people to understand and appreciate what's going on without trying to be offensive. But Islam is not what social media and pundits on TV talk about it being. I'll just say that. But here's the module navigation, and this is a really good link that I'd like you guys to explore. I actually went to this area. This is one of the Grand Mosque of Isfahan. And what I like about this is it's a static camera, but we can look all around the mosque as if we're standing here. And I actually stood here, and I have photos right up there. Let's see if I can show you some of my photos from my own. Because, well, I don't know if I'll be able to find the exact photos of my time in Isfahan, but I will show you some of the other photos that I've taken. Sorry, but this is just an exceptional. I mean, it is huge. Now, there's a couple of things that you'll notice, I hope, as we look at this, that are very different from the churches that you and I are comfortable going to in the U.S. One is you'll notice that there's a huge courtyard. There's not a lot of people around. Well, these are not built to be homes for a priesthood, because in Islam there is not a professional priesthood like there is in most Christian faiths. And well, it's not the same. An imam is not a priest. Imam is an Arabic word that means guy in front, and that's what the leader of congregations is known as in most Muslim paths. And what this building is actually for is everybody in the neighborhood, specific times of day, to meet together and to pray. And that's why the courtyard is so big, because it's meant to accommodate thousands of people at a time. And we'll talk about that more in just a little bit. But something else that you'll notice is that there is this stuff up in the ceiling right there. It looks incredibly intricate. The name for that is Muqarnas, Muqarnas. And Muqarnas, sometimes it's NIS, sometimes it's NUS, but it's what it is. It's designed to look like lace out of three-dimensional areas like cement or ceramic or tile, and it's put there so that when you look up towards heaven, you see this incredibly complicated thing, and it almost feels like heaven is dipping down, and that's what it's designed to look like. And there's some examples of really intricate Muqarnas, and this is, believe it or not, a pretty simple Macarnas. They'll get really, really complicated. You'll also notice that as we get closer, the tiling in here, the designs of the tiling are incredibly intricate. And there's a lot of abstract floral illustration or floral designs. And we'll talk about that. What is fascinating to me is that it looks incredibly complicated, but you can actually break it down into repeated blocks that are mirrored and set next to each other. And it's convinces your eye that it is incredibly complicated when it's actually based on geometry that all of us learned when we were in high school. So very, very cool stuff. And I wanted to share with you just some of the photos that I took while I was in just of some of the different things. And, I had to take pictures of the food too because it was astounding. But here is some of the other stuff that I saw when I was in Iran. This one of the dinosaur I think is particularly funny because when I first saw this mosque, I was told, oh, that's the oldest mosque in Iran. And everybody was laughing because, silly American. This is actually one of the mosques that was converted into a natural history museum. And they have all these sayings, and this was in Tehran, a lot of these sayings in the parks. And there's a lot of these sayings that tell you how to get along with your neighbors, different sayings that remind you about your faith, stuff like that. And I just thought it was really interesting. And here's a fantastic dragon. That's part of the coat of arms of the town of Isfahan. It's that the mosque is from. This actually was part of a bridge. It was 1,000 years old. And each of the pediments over the arches have different designs that are put in. So lots of really very cool stuff. This is from the inside of a mosque. But this is an example of what I was telling you about. Some of the Macarnas is incredibly detailed. That's what that is. It does look like three-dimensional lace dripping down from the heavens, doesn't it? So I was just absolutely fascinated by all the different kind of work that was going on. This is not a mosque. This is actually a music room. And it was designed, instead of Macarnas, these are actually designed to be sound baffles so that the musicians did not get a lot of echo in their music, which I absolutely cool. So this is a intricate wood panel, and I put myself in there for scale. And for anybody that says that Muslims do not ever use human figures in their art, this was in Isfahan in Persia, and these are definitely, this is a public building, these are definitely human figures. Not only that, but the ones right up front are pretty close to are almost life size. So these are pretty intricate battle scenes and details, and they are very human figures. So, and this is, like I said, very definitely Muslim art. This is taken at a palace that was right in Isfahan itself. All right, I'm going to go back to our regular scheduled program again. But I would really recommend going to this link, 360cities.net, Mosque of Isfahan. It is totally worth looking around. So as we go to the next part of the module, talks a little bit about Iran. The people that live there, it is known as Iran by the people that live there, but it's also known as Persia. And the Persian Empire was gigantic at one time. And Oh, did somebody else come in? Oh, I thought I heard the thing chiming. Okay. If we look right here at this world map, Persia or Iran is right here. And you can see from the map, there's like almost 100% population of Muslims. There's not. There's also Jews and Christians that live there. And the federal armed forces protect the Christian churches and synagogues from any sort of terrorist attack in Iran. This is the Saudi or the Arabian Peninsula. So this is where Mecca is, and Medina, and the other cities that are important to Islam. And then you can see that there's a high concentration of Muslims in North Africa, of course in Iran, through Turkey, the stans like Kazakhstan and Turkestan right up here, and Afghanistan, of course, and Pakistan right here. And then over here we have Indonesia. There's a lot going on here. I believe this is Bangladesh. So that's where the highest concentrations of Muslims are, Muslim communities in the world. So Iran or Persia is a very, very Muslim country. I wanted to go through this. I wanted to share a little bit about my experience with Islam. And there's some stuff right here that talks about Islam in general. And I wanted to share a little bit, particularly addressing expectations of Western social media and what the reality is. When Islam appeared in 610 AD in the Arabian Peninsula, so that's this area right here, at that time, before Islam happened, it began with an initial interaction between the Prophet Muhammad and the angel Gabriel, and that's the same Gabriel that's mentioned in the Bible that came to Mary and told her that she was going to have baby Jesus. So it's the same angel. When the Prophet Muhammad was alive, before the advent of Islam, women's rights were extremely minimal. If you were a young lady and you could, up to the age of 14, if your family had the choice of feeding you or feeding a goat, they would rather get rid of you and keep the goat. And it was completely legal for a family to bury their living daughters in the sand outside of town, that they would suffocate and die up until they were teenagers, and which is horrible. Women were not viewed as human beings for the most part. People looked at women at their hair and determined their breedability and health by the luster of their hair, and they were considered not quite second-class citizens, because you have to be recognized as a human being to be even a second-class citizen. They were viewed almost on the same level as cattle, livestock, and breeding, for breeding human beings, for breeding sons specifically. When Islam emerged, the Prophet Muhammad used the hair covering that he actually borrowed from Christians. The hijab that Christians use are most often seen on nuns, that they're wearing a hijab, and on the bridal veil for Western weddings. Those are both hijabs. But the Prophet Muhammad and Islam borrowed the hijab, the hair covering, from their neighboring Christians. And the Prophet specifically did that so that men would be forced to look at women in their face and recognize their humanity. So in Islam, the rights of women were much better than before the advent of Islam. I want that to be clear in everybody's mind, that Islam was a religion that respected the humanity of women. Women could actually inherit and have a voice in government. It was commanded that all people, men and women, should read, so women were educated. And women could now own things in Islam. The reason why it doesn't look like that in social media today is because, just like with every religion, people in the local community will put their own stamp on the expression of a faith and change things. That's one of the reasons why, as Christians, we celebrate Easter and Christmas. Those are both adaptations into Christianity from surrounding religions. The what Christmas and Easter represent or not, those are very Christian, but the actual celebration time, Christmas in December and Easter in the spring, those are heavily influenced by other religions and the concept of Christianity. So when you see a woman wearing a burqa or a chador, which is an Iranian version of the hijab, those are regional influences. They're tribal. Those are not Muslim influences. But the people that live there consider themselves Muslim, and so they've confused the issue. Right? I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that. The hair covering is a symbol of the woman's claim to virtue and humanity. It is not intended to keep her downtrodden at all. In fact, Islam, as visited by the Prophet Muhammad, as expressed by the Prophet Muhammad, extended human rights, not just to women, but to people that were not Christian, Jews, or Muslims as well. And I shared a couple really interesting examples from my time in Iran that were very surprising. The Iranian government does consider itself an Islamic republic, and so the laws are based on their understanding of Islamic principles and Islamic tradition. Just like the laws in the United States are based on our understanding of the Bible and Christian tradition. What is really interesting to me is when I was in Iran, I expected women to be disempowered. I expected things to be very much like what we were shown on the news. What I discovered was the woman who was in charge of international students was the woman that basically served as my bodyguard when I was in Iran. She made sure that I didn't get arrested. She made sure that I followed the rules. She had her chador, which was the Persian hair covering, and I found out that she was actually getting her PhD in women in mystical Islam, and she was a nationally ranked kickboxer. So she was very, very much real. My physical bodyguard. She could defend us if needed. And it was interesting to me. I'm so used to things like ham and bacon and pork sausage. None of that is in Iran. There's no alcoholic beverages. Instead, you have something that is supposed to taste like beer, that is actually, it's a lot more like horchata, and it's very interesting. And instead of that milky base, that milk fruity base that horchata has, the Iranian non-alcoholic beer has more of it tastes like cream of wheat as the base, so it's really odd flavored, but there's no alcohol. And I find that people have a tendency, in my experience there, to self-police, which meant that they would de-escalate situations as rapidly as possible, but the police were not called. They felt that the police had better things to do. And that meant that most everybody was a peacemaker. And it was very interesting, because I remember being in 7th, 8th grade, if there was a fight on the playground, everybody wanted to go and see it, watch it as entertainment. Something similar happens in Iran. Everybody in the community rushes to it, painlessly separates the two people and invites them to go home to calm down. So it's a very different way of looking at things. the reason why this picture is the picture that we use here is that it is the interior dome of one of these Persian mosques that is so beautiful. And there's a couple reasons for the designs. There is a very specific look to Islamic structure and design. There's something called semiotics, and there is somebody called Vitruvius that I want you to remember if you can. Vitruvius was a Roman general who was also an architect, and he wrote 10 books, they're short books, about how architecture, since it is for human beings, needs to reference the human form. So the size and shape of architecture needs to be created for our specific needs. This is one reason why the boards over the top of the door frame are called headers. And when you have plates at the bottom of the door, they're called kick plates. There's also footers, there's baseboards. A lot of these things, their names come from structures or the awareness that they are for human bodies. When we look at these two buildings, both of these are in the United States. This is a Victorian home, and this is a very contemporary modern home. The actual style is called modernist because it's designed to be look very different from historical things like Victorian architecture. Now, we look at these. The materials are different. This has a lot more painted wood. This feels like it's either metal or cement. The forms are very different. This has a lot of blocks. This has a lot of triangles, and it has this tower with a conical peak to it. This has a very obvious chimney that is part of the aesthetic design. The windows vary quite a bit. They're a little bit smaller. There are some arches involved, but most of the windows are rectangular. Here, all the windows are rectangular. The windows are in openings that are really big. It doesn't have any cones or triangles like that. It all feels like it's blocks. So we can tell that, and none of this is painted. It's the raw metal. Here, the wood is painted different colors. These reflect how people look at their surroundings and how people wanted to live and the kind of building they want to live in. There are specific references to cultures at the time within both of these buildings, but overall, you can tell that this is built of very different materials, and this is built much more recently than this, or at least the design is much more recent. This looks like it was from a design, if it was built more recently, it was at least built from a design that was probably made between 1865 and 1890. This design looks more like it was designed between 1965 and 1980. So, quite almost 100 years apart, and you can tell very much. And as we look at these, each of these have different shapes that mean different things, and the awareness of that meaning, or the awareness of meaning in general, is called semiotics. So the semiotics of this, the general meaning of this is you come into the home and it's designed to help you feel comfortable. Here, the semiotics of this, you have a big open space that is designed to help you relax. And even though they're very similar, they go about it in very different ways. But we can still tell that these are homes designed to shelter people. When we look at architecture for a mosque, there are some things that we need to be aware of as we're looking at it from this semiotics or meaning, what is the meaning standpoint. Homes are designed to shelter, so they're going to have ceilings to keep off the outside weather, but also to help you feel secure. This is from a new blue mosque in Turkey, created by, or designed by a man named Mimar Sinan, or Sinan the architect. This mosque is incredibly high. It's several stories up in the air. And it's called the Blue Mosque for relatively obvious reasons, hopefully. There's a lot of blue. But it is designed to get you to start looking up at heaven and feel the vast opening of heaven above you, but also to help you feel sheltered. So the semiotics of this is to draw your awareness upwards towards the metaphorical abode of God. Now, one of the principles that is in much of the Islamic art that we see is something called Aniconism. Iconism. An means against or non. So iconism means making images. Now, an icon is a religious work of art, and it's specifically um, tied to Christian tradition in this part of the world. These icons were created by Christians to symbolize the individuals that the icons represented. And it was considered by people who use this church to be not very different from the actual person being there. So it represented an actual individual that had been uh, saved or transcended the mortal plane. In Eastern Orthodox and a lot of other Christian faiths, there is this tradition that people who are saved, people who are worthy to be in the presence of God, um, have something of an angelic presence around them. They're not angels, but they have something of that presence around them. And if God is truly infinite and unapproachable, then there is this belief in many Christian churches that we need to invite or ask or plead with these saints to intercede with us or for on our behalf so that God will listen to our prayers. And so the icons are very important to the religion because when you see the icon of the saint, you can ask the saint, will you please ask God on my behalf for this blessing? Essentially. You see also a lot of saint imagery in stained glass, and the biblical stories of saints and the information given by the saints through stained glass, that's called typology. I put that there. Now, in Islam, in the Quran, it says that you should not worship anything other than God, and that you should not worship any image of a man, an animal, anything else. And for most Muslim artists, that directive was translated to mean you do not put human beings or animals in the direct worship space. And that avoidance of, this is a very Christian church, or this is a Lutheran church, I believe, and we have an image of Jesus there, and then you have the saints in the windows. You're not going to find that in a Muslim church in the worship space because it is inappropriate to have any images of human or animals, for the most part, in the worship space, particularly as you face Mecca. And so, we have these two Christian churches. Feels more like this is very Russian Orthodox. This is very Lutheran. They both have images of people. But you do not have images of people in Muslim mosques. In general, there are some exceptions, and most of them are much older mosques. But what you'll see is actually all these fantastic designs that are based on organic shapes from plants and a lot of geometry. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is that the abstracted plants are designed to remind you of the growth in heaven. It's designed to remind you symbolically that heaven is a paradise. And then the geometry is designed to help remind you that you belong to an intentional plan, that God planned everything out. You may not know what part of the plan you are, but everything is part of that plan. So that's why you have so much geometry, and it's called vegetal or abstracted plants. You also see right here, this is Arabic calligraphy. In the Quran, it says you need to have the Quran written in your heart and all around you. You need to have it in your mind. And so you see a lot of Arabic calligraphy, specifically passages from the Quran, in most structures throughout Islamic building. ordered, and it was important to be mindful of the fact that God was intentional. And so I have included a couple different people. Al-Ghazali said, geometry is the language of the universe. It is the foundation upon which all things are built. And I think that this is a reference to the Old Testament passage in Genesis, which says that God used measure, weight, and number to create the universe. Another thing you probably don't know about Islam is that Islam is one of the Abrahamic faiths. They believe they are descended from Ishmael, who was the older son of Abraham. And in Islamic theology, you cannot be a true Muslim without recognizing that the Bible is also the Word of God as long as it's translated correctly. So they feel that they are the logical continuation from Judaism to Christianity, then to Islam. And the word Islam itself means follower of the way or being obedient, and a Muslim is someone who follows the way or is obedient. Now here's somebody else. This person's name is Al-Khwarizmi, and he was the first one that really focused on algebra as we understand it today. He's considered the father and founder of algebra. And his work, the completion or rejoining, is Al-Jabr, and that is believed to be the basis for our words, algorithm and algebra. And then even Nimar Sinan, Ibrahim Ibn Sinan was a mathematician and astronomer who studied geometry, especially tangents to circles. And the reason why these people are important is because this helps us to understand why so much of Islamic art and decoration is based on geometry, math. Now, when I was in Iran or Persia, one of the really big important things was Hadith Qudsi, which is a divinely inspired saying of the Prophet Muhammad about God being al-Musawwir, or the shaper of beauty. Prophet Muhammad said, God is beautiful and loves beauty. And that's one of the reasons why you see so much decoration in Islamic Muslim structures and homes and just ordinary things, a lot of artifacts, because they felt that by making things beautiful, every time you made something beautiful, every time you created art, you were also praying. I thought that was a beautiful perspective to have, especially as an artist. So we have a quiz here, and I wanted to do a preview so you can see the quiz. What is a mosque? I think all of these fit because not all mosques have domes, but most do. It is a place of worship for Muslims, and it is a type of religious building that is often extremely ornate, as we saw with all those really delicate and intricate decorations on the inside of the building. Now, what is interesting, too, is that the first mosque that Prophet Muhammad built in the city of Medina, right at the beginning of the 7th century, were actually for Jews and Christians to also use. That is one of the reasons why Muslims pray on Friday, so that Jews can use the mosque on Saturday and Christians can use it on Sunday. But that's not something that we hear very often. And then we look at that map. Where are some of the highest concentrations of Muslim populations? Well, in Northern Africa, very much so. In not so much in Norway or South Africa, so that bottom one isn't right. In the Middle East, definitely. Asia, a little bit. Not so much in Southern Africa, but also the Middle East, definitely. Mexico, South America, Northern Africa. Northern Africa, yes, but not Mexico or South America. So that's second answer, Middle East, Northern Africa, and Indonesia. That is correct. Now, the opposition to using images of living creatures in art is anti-icon or Aniconism. It's not antipathy, it's not the Quran, it's not Islam. They don't, I showed you there's images of human beings and animals in Islamic art all the time, but you don't use images of human beings and animals. As much as possible, you avoid using that within the worship space itself. And that is called Aniconism. Many Muslim mosques include calligraphy on their walls. And if you remember, the calligraphy is Arabic, and they are most often passages from the Quran. Oh, that is a little bit frustrating. You probably hear the buzzing there in the background. Again, it's my computer. There's nothing I can do about it, so I hope it's not too frustrating to you. Now this, we're going to go a little bit to return to your artist research. This I mentioned your annotated bibliography. In Module 3, you viewed 20 artists and picked one. Then in Module 6, you found 10 resources on that one artist that you could use. Now, what you're going to be doing now is, the next step after this is a PowerPoint. But what you're going to be doing now is creating annotated bibliography. Bibliography is a list of books. Annotated means you write about it, but not for all 10 sources. You only are going to be picking 3 sources to explore. All right? And remember, bibliography is about books. It is not a biography, which is about a life. So what you're going to be doing is picking 3 out of those 10 sources, and it has to be on the one artist that you picked in Module 3. You're going to be using those 3 sources. You're going to be looking at them, and then you are going to do 3 things with them. The first is you're going to write an MLA format citation, and I do have a couple websites that I will put in this to help. I have this 11-minute tutorial about it, but I have found also, in the meantime, I found a couple websites that will actually format your citation for you in proper MLA format. So you just plug in the information, and then it creates what it's supposed to look like. Now, part of MLA format, though, is including something at the end of the citation if it's a citation that uses the internet. And I'll talk about that in just a second. So the 3 things you're going to be doing is, first, you're going to be finding 3 of those sources to look at. You're going to look at them. Second, and they all have to be on the same artist as that artist that you picked from Module 3. Second thing you're going to be doing is citing them using MLA format. And this is where I'm getting to the other thing at the end. If it is an online resource, which almost always going to be, you're going to have to add a very short phrase at the end of the MLA citation. And that phrase is accessed on and the date. And all 3 of those phrases need to have the same format for the date. So you can write out the month or whatever, or you can do slashes between. It doesn't, the numbers, it doesn't matter, but it needs to be the same format in all 3 at the end of all 3 citations. And the third thing you're going to be doing is writing 2 paragraphs about each of your sources. The first paragraph is going to be 2 to 5 sentences where you're going to be summarizing what it is. If it was a video, if it was a website with pictures on it, if it was an article, whatever. The first paragraph is a summary. The second paragraph is going to be your reflection on how important that was and what you learned from it regarding the artist that you picked. All right. So, so I have some tutorials that I need you to watch, but I will also put in links to those websites that I mentioned that give you an easier way to create the citation. And I gave an example, and you can see this. Follow the example. I have my artist, and I wrote my name, and my artist is Al Farrell, and then there's 3 authors of this article. I'm sorry, not 3 authors. This is not an authored article like that. It's a gallery. So these are all the artists that are participating in the actual gallery show. And the list of artists is in the order that the gallery itself listed at. We just happen to have Al Farrell at the top, at the beginning. So this is actually correct MLA formatting citation. Then I have the name of the actual art gallery right there. And then I have Forum Gallery in conjunction with the Crocker Art Museum. That's the source that published it and the years they put it together. And then, so all that is the MLA file format citation. Then I wrote accessed on June 17, 2022. And that's going to be the format that I use for my date on all things. So this, from the period after that last 2, all the way to the beginning of the A, is my correctly formatted citation. And you see in this first paragraph, I talk about what this is. It's an exhibition catalog that Al Farrell is talking about his own work. And then the second paragraph is my reflection and observations on it and how it helps me understand the artist. So then I numbered that 1. Number 2, I just wrote next citation in alphabetical order, followed by the accessed on phrase. It was an online source, plus the 2 paragraphs. And then the last citation, the third citation, I do the same thing. And these 3 citations need to be in alphabetical order from that first letter. All right? And then I give very clear steps. There's 10 steps. The last one is you're done turning it in. But that, I hope, will help you. If you have any questions, contact me. But if you have any questions about this, if more than one person has the same question, I will go make a change in this portion of the module, and we'll talk about it next week as well. And then I have a rubric here which shows you how everything's going to be graded, what the points are for. So that's another way to help answer questions. So before you email me with your questions, watch all these videos that show you how to do it, and look at this sample, then follow the steps, and if you still have questions after looking at the rubric, then contact me. All right? Then your last thing is your studio exercise. And this, you get to make your own tessellation. Now, I should tell you, this, see right here, this image? A tessellation means tiling. So a tessellation of something is a tiling of something, where a section of something is repeated, flipped over, or mirrored, and set next to it. So you have a repeated design. Now right here, we could draw a line horizontally across this image. I'm looking at the left-hand image here. We can draw a line horizontally across this, and we can also draw a line vertically in the middle. And that corner becomes a tessellation, because this area is repeated here as a mirror, and then both of these are repeated over on the left side as a mirror. In this, what we're going to be doing is visiting. So we talk a little bit about what that tessellation is. These are tessellations. And you can see, if you draw a line from the center out, and another, the tessellation tile shape of this actually becomes a pie shape. So they're all repeated around the center of this. This one is not. The repeated pattern is right in here. It's a little teeny block, and it includes this shape right here that's kind of this odd diamond, and it contains these kind of things that look like leaves, and then this diamond. And that shape is repeated over and over again and flipped around. And that's how you get these triangle shapes repeating. As we look at this tessellation is a little bit more complicated than the first one. Look at it's not just pie shapes. Actually, no, I'm wrong. It is repeated pie shapes. You go from the center here to the point and take that straight out. Do that all the way around. Look at this. If you go from the center up to here, or from the center right to there, that pie shape is mirrored right here, and then mirrored over here. And then we have the secondary pie shape right here that's also mirrored. So there's a tessellation of two very different pie shapes coming from the center here. And then right here, you draw a line down here, that's what this tessellation and this tessellation are mirrored. So they're tessellations of each other. That's fast. And then this one just gives me a headache. You know, that's flipping and flopping all over the place. That's amazing. So the Qatar Foundation created this website called Tile Maker. And we're going right to the Tile Maker. And it talks, and you can accept this or whatever. And then it gives you instructions on how to do this. And I want you to play around with it. There's a tutorial right here that you can watch. Talks about the different elements that are being used. And then what I want you to do is play around with it. You know, do a couple that are just kind of goofy at the beginning, and then look at some of those the images you find online of Islamic or mosque art. You know, the kind of tiling and stuff like that, and use that to help you decide what colors you're going to be doing, what shapes you're going to be doing, and just play with it. And I would recommend the first couple you make, just erase them, and then make the 5 you need to turn in for real. So you get full points for trying, and each of the 5 designs you make have to be unique. They have to be different, and they have to be yours. So you're going to be making 5 different designs, and the easiest way to do this is to use that tile maker, tessellate it so that it fills a significant area of the screen, and then just take a screenshot of that. So that, I'm doing something here really quick. Excuse me. Then take a screenshot of that, save it as a PDF or a JPEG, and then that's what you're going to be turning in. And I'm going to open up a page here that where people have submitted a couple. I'm not going to show all the submissions. I'm just going to show one submission. All right, you see that? This is one submission from somebody where the tessellation center right here, center right there, so it's a pie-shaped tessellation. Again, same kind of thing. But each of these, see how they're very different? They use very different color schemes. This is an absolutely perfect example of what we're looking for. So that's what I need you to do. Visit this and create a couple of these and save your 5 best ones. When you save them, remember using a snip type program or a screen grab. You're going to take an image of the design on your screen, and then you're going to save it as a PDF or JPEG, and that's what you're going to be putting in. And to get full credit, you need to do 5 of these, and each of them need to be unique. All right. So that is pretty much what I needed to cover tonight. And I'm sorry, I kind of look weird. The couch is really slippery that I'm on, or the chair that I'm on, and so I've been sliding down and leaning back further and I hope you had a really good experience during the fall break and did what you needed to, and everybody was safe. And if you do have questions, let me know, and I will put them into the next lecture, the next video that we have together next week. So I'm really happy with how things are going. I think you guys are doing great. And I'm very pleased that several of you, when I typed in little things, comments about, you get more points if you do this, revisit this, return this in, or resubmit. You guys have been doing that, and your grades, of course, go up. So that's excellent. Thank you. Very good work. One thing I would like you to do is be mindful of the two easiest ways that you have to get your grade better, if it's not where you want it. First is make sure that you have turned in all of the attendance submissions. Watch the videos that are in this. There was a couple of people this last time I had you watch a Renaissance video, and a couple of people watched that and only turned in things that they learned about that. And in order to get full points for your attendance, you need to follow the directions, which in that case was 2 things that you learned from the class lecture and 1 thing you learned from the Renaissance video. So, look for comments like that. The second thing that's really easy to boost your grade is all of the quizzes can be taken over and over again until you get a perfect score. So go back, whatever quizzes that you don't have perfect scores on, just retake them or fix it and you can retake them as many times as you need to so that you can get a perfect score on the quizzes. Those are the 2 easiest. All right? And then, of course, just turning in things that you've already accomplished is really important, as well as resubmitting things, making the alterations or changes that I suggest. Really helps quite a bit. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. I hope you have a lot of fun with these tessellations. And I hope you've learned something about Islam that you didn't know before and about Islamic art, definitely, that you did not know before. One thing I should mention, too, because it's the Islamic Republic, their time zone doesn't fit with everybody else around them. They are 30 minutes off, which made jet lag coming back surprisingly even harder to deal with. I don't know why. It was only 30 minutes. It shouldn't have affected me as much as it did. But I thought that was interesting. I have a lot of other stories about my time there, and I hope we get a chance to share them at some point in the future. And next week, we are going to be looking at, let's see. Impressionism. So we have been looking at geographical areas for art. Now we're going to be starting to look at periods of art or movements. A period of art is a lot longer than a movement, and a movement of art is pretty localized, dealing with just a handful of ideas. And we will talk about that distinction next week as well. Hope you have a wonderful week, and I look forward to talking to everybody again next Tuesday. Thank you so much for coming.